Well, good morning, West End. You're going to see two sermons today because there's a whole thing going on with me and my glasses and not looking the way that I'm used to. So there's the Eagle Has Landed sermon, and then there is the sermon that I'm about to preach right now. So pray for this preacher. This is our celebration of Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. There are over 50 nations speaking more than 200 languages included under this huge umbrella, which we are celebrating today. And I want to thank Henry Lee and Winnie Shao for standing under that umbrella with me as we work to honor the beauty and the experiences and the history of so many diverse cultures. I want to call your attention to two of the lines you just heard read. Jesus saying in the book of John, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you." And then the prophet Jeremiah, who was called to speak for God, who says, "They have treated the wound of my people carelessly, saying peace, peace, when there is no peace." I lift for your hearing today the title, one that you have heard before, "No Justice, No Peace." But I'm using a different spelling, K-N-O-W, no justice, K-N-O-W, no peace. No as in be aware of, have a relationship with. You may have heard this saying before at protest marches. There are several slogans that people use, but no justice, no peace always feels especially powerful to me. Unfortunately, it may even feel a little threatening to some people. The idea that your desire for peace will not be honored without my desire or my fulfillment of justice. And on this Sunday, when we celebrate the accomplishments and the heritage of the people from China, Taiwan, Japan, Korea, India, Pakistan, just to name a few, one of the things that we have to acknowledge that we have in common right now is the violence towards our respective communities. It's AAPI Heritage Month, but we've been chanting "No Justice, No Peace" together for a while. I remember when I was at Union Theological Seminary, where our dear Matt just graduated this past week. A group of us went down to Grand Central Station to protest Eric Gardner's death. There have been so many deaths at the hands of police officers. Let me be specific. He was the one who was arrested and who kept saying, "I can't breathe." So we were in Grand Central Station chanting "No Justice, No Peace," and there was a young Asian woman who was very much dressed like a Wall Street big shot, had on a suit and a briefcase, and everyone was sort of standing around looking at us. But when we started to say "No Justice, No Peace," I think she might have had a coffee in her hand. She threw the coffee away, and the next thing I knew, she was right next to me with her fist in the air. That's right, she was with us. Our communities know what it means to be united, especially when we're under attack. I imagine that some of you looked at this title and you hear that story and you think, "Ugh, here we go again. Here comes another sermon about Buffalo or gun violence." I imagine some of you said, "Listen, I feel bad enough already. I don't want to hear about that anymore. It was horrible, yes, but why are we still talking about it? And what does any of this have to do with Jesus? I just want to come to church and feel better and not worse." Believe me, no one is more tired of calls for justice than Black people. This is not misery poker, but I am sure no one is more tired of calls for inclusion than Asian American and Pacific Islanders. No one is probably more tired of calls for acceptance than the LGBTQ community. But Zora Neale Hurston told me that if you are silent about your pain, they'll kill you and say you enjoyed it. So I am not silent. I am here again preaching justice because God has called me to this pulpit. I am here preaching this particular sermon at this time because you are the people that I have been called to. And West End, I trust you. I trust you to hear the call for justice and to understand how that call for justice is rooted in your faith. It is rooted in the teachings of the resurrection of Jesus Christ. I trust that you no longer need milk and are ready for meat. If I didn't believe it, I wouldn't be able to stand here knowing that at this very moment, some man somewhere in some pulpit, maybe even a woman, is standing and preaching damnation and hellfire for me. I stand here knowing that there are people in this country who would gladly see me suffer, who would gladly see me stripped of my rights, who rejoice at the thought of me having no control over my body. There are people who are eagerly anticipating snatching books out of my hands and words of truth and justice out of my mouth. There are people who do not want to see us, all of us, especially the marginalized communities like the Black and the brown people and Asian and Pacific Islanders and Indians and indigenous people. They don't want to see us working together with white allies. I can tell you that because last summer, there were Black Lives Matter marches in every state in America, and now there are laws that have been passed or in the process of being passed that give you permission to run down those same protesters. So I feel the lament and the anguish of the prophet Jeremiah in this moment, crying out again and again and being ignored. Even worse, being told to calm down, being told to extend grace when none is ever returned. We are always urged to be peaceful. How many white male shooters are we expected to forgive? How many grandmothers at prayer service or grocery shopping must be sacrificed before the self-inflicted toxic rage that some men in this country feel is appeased? How many Asian Americans have to be attacked, vilified, blamed before we can expect justice? How can you cry peace to me when I watch our Asian and Black elders who survived the worst of the past be rewarded with gun violence and attacks in the present? They have treated my wound carelessly, saying peace, peace, when there is no peace. There is no peace. What this country must realize is what Jeremiah knew and what Jesus preached long ago. You cannot have peace if there is no justice. But here is the good news. We know that there is nothing new under the sun. We have seen how empire and power and oppression and bigotry and racism and hatred has tried to keep us from uniting. We know the tactics. We know the dog whistles and the innuendos. We can be on the alert for them, making sure they are not given a foothold or the ability to impede our progress. We can continue to recognize that coalitions between our various groups only make us stronger. We must also recognize the harm that we sometimes do to each other. There is work to do inside and between and outside all of these groups. But I do know that the promise that Jesus made was not in vain. Jesus promised to leave his peace with us. Well, Pastor Bridget, what does that mean? Well, I'm glad you asked. It means that we are not alone. It means that God delights in our work and stands beside us and blesses the effort. It means that each of us has something that we can do to make this world a better place. It doesn't matter if you are young or old, whether you feel like your life stretches like a long, winding road ahead of you. As I sit here, I look at my son, I can imagine he sees his life long and stretched out. Or if you're in the days where things are winding down to sunsets on the porch, each and every one of us must put our hands to the plow. I know, Weston, that you think that you have done enough. Some of us have lost friends and family because of the understanding of how Black Lives Matter is connected to Jesus' teachings. Some of you did the bulk of your work in the 60s and the 70s and 80s. You've already marched and fought and petitioned and wrote postcards and called. I know some of you thought that there were battles that had been fought and won. I remember doing a paper on Cesar Chavez when I was in high school, and I assumed that because I was doing a paper on him that migrant workers were respected and had achieved their rights, and migrant worker rights was not still a thing. Imagine my surprise that they are still fighting for rights, for education, health care, fair wages. So I know that many of you are weary and heartbroken to see your work and your activism be trampled by this new crop of blathering political idiots. What we have learned is that peace and justice are ongoing efforts and not end goals that can be checked off and shelved away and put aside for safekeeping. West End, if you are tired, rest. And know that resting does not mean retiring. Our Jewish siblings tell us that you are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to desist from it. There's the saying, leave a little good undone every day. Like you, I am determined to follow Jesus and to do the work. Jesus has laid out a path, a method, a blueprint for justice and peace. It's very simple. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love God. Love yourself thoroughly. Recognize that you are the beloved of God, that nothing can separate you from that love. Jesus told us, peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not let them be afraid. Weston and I have decided to follow Jesus, to not be troubled, to not be afraid. Jesus, the one who is intimately connected to peace and justice, the one who points us again and again to our own agency, our own abilities, our God-given ability to do better, to get it right, to try once again. We can build a better world for ourselves, for our children, for our neighbors, for those who come after us. It does not have to be filled with hatred and violence and bigotry. This world can be peaceful. This world can be filled with justice. But it will take hard work that may never stop. But it is possible. My ancestors believed in this possibility strong enough to survive and to ensure that my voice can ring out today. And so as we celebrate the beauty and the diversity of the Asian American and Pacific Islander community, let us remember the words of activists like Yuri Kochiyama, my apologies for butchering her name, who worked to form coalitions between Asian Americans and Black and Latino movements, who worked in Harlem, who reminded us that we are all part of one another. Beloved, do not let your hearts be troubled. Do not be afraid. We will know justice, and we will know peace. We must have them both. I want to close with the words from the Indian activist Arundhati Roy, who said, "Another world is not only possible, she is on her way. On a quiet day, I can hear her breathing." Listen. Can you hear it? If you can, let the church say amen.